Hey guys, and welcome to Nintenduary, an entire month where we take a look at a different Nintendo 64 game every single day for the entire month and make a review on it. Today is day 27, and we are finally going to be touching on the Star Wars games on the Nintendo 64. Originally, this episode was just going to be on Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, but what ended up happening was we really still kind of wanted to talk about the other Star Wars games, so I'm going to try to do all three of them in a nice 5-6 minute long video. Wish me luck. But with no time to lose, let's get into it. Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racing is a pretty unique experience. I actually never owned this game as a kid, but I do remember renting it from time to time or playing it at a friend's house. It's a racing game, just like kind of out of the film, except it's a little bit more exciting than the actual entirety of Episode 1. I mean, don't get me wrong, as a kid, Episode 1 was still awesome just because it's Star Wars. But the game kind of fleshes out that idea of the racing element, which is kind of cool here. And the gameplay itself is actually pretty fun. There's tight controls and a decent amount of individual unique levels to race through that actually makes the game seem like a fully fleshed out experience, which is nice for a licensed game. At the same time though, this game definitely feels much more like a racing game than it would a Star Wars game, so take that with what you will. If you're a Star Wars fan, you're not getting a whole lot of Star Wars content out of this game, but if you're a racing fan, this is a pretty good game. And we also didn't get to talk about F-Zero this month, but at the same time, the games are pretty similar here, where if you're a fan of racing games, you'll probably like them both. I would actually go ahead and argue that this game is pretty underrated overall. I don't know, just the high intensity of racing and just knowing that your speedometer is reaching up to 500 miles an hour is just a really cool concept overall, and I think it really just kind of does this next level futuristic science fiction, space opera, racing adventure game. That's a lot of genres. Good job, Elijah. My only complaint is I wish there was more competitiveness with other racers, I guess. I feel like majority of the time I'm either in the front of the pack and I don't see any other racers, or I'm in the middle or the back and I don't see any other racers unless they're blowing up or I'm the one blowing up. It's not the most action-packed, or there's not the sense of tightness between your races if you're about to take the lead or lose the lead or anything. It just, I wish there was a little bit more of that, but I can't fault this game too much because it's a pretty solid racer on the N64. Of course, we can't talk about Star Wars on the Nintendo 64 without talking about Shadows of the Empire. And can I just start by saying, wow, the first level of this game actually really makes players feel like they're in Empire Strikes Back, and the battle on Hoth is really, really cool, and it's the Star Wars game that pretty much everyone has always wanted up until this point. And then after you beat the level, you play as a knockoff Han Solo? Yeah. Once again, I can't fault this game too much because it's the Nintendo 64. They were trying different things. The story in this game is definitely not the best or most amazing story. There's not really likable characters, and I don't really understand where the plot's going, but I do have to give them credit because this game does do a great job in level design, an amazing job in mechanics, in vehicle mechanics, and just general world building is actually pretty fantastic here. I gotta say, for 1996, I think is when this game came out, there was nothing else like this out on the market, and Shadows of the Empire was a pretty solid experience. There was tons of places to go, tons of vehicles to try, there were enemy classes from the movies, and any Star Wars fan would really like this. There's definitely a lot more life breathing out of this game than pod racing. And while the story and characters might be hated by the community or the fans or whatever, it's got its own little subtle charm, especially now that it's not canon. And I mean, there's cool jetpacking parts of the game, and I really, really enjoy jetpacking for some reason. Just gives me back Pilot Wings flashbacks. And I think it's kind of funny in its own way that they use their own Han Solo knockoff character, because I bet you a ton of kids thought that it was Han Solo, and then at the end of the game you meet Han Solo, and then that probably threw some people for a loop. So that's like some cool next level conspiracy theory type game here. But this game is actually pretty solid. If you haven't played it, I would actually recommend playing it, and it might be one of those games you weirdly enough like and play through, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. And of course, last but not least, how could we possibly forget about Star Wars Rogue Squadron? Remember how just like a minute ago I said that that first level made you feel like you're in Empire Strikes Back. Well, fortunately enough, the team who worked on Rogue Squadron decided to take that concept and that general awesome feel and turn it into an entire video game. And surprisingly enough, guys, Rogue Squadron looks fantastic today. I mean, if Rogue Squadron was even just ported as is without any remake or anything surrounding that onto like PC or any current gen console, I think people would still play it and still praise it for how amazing the game looked, especially by N64 standards. I mean, the textures are crystal clear and the terrains look great, the other ships look great, and I love the fact that there's just such a focus here in this game as the team really knew what they were doing. The gameplay is tight, the controls are tight, the ships are all unique in their own way, and they provide their own unique experiences, and all the different places you get to travel to really flesh out the world of Star Wars, which is a really cool experience, and it's something that really couldn't be done prior to the N64 days, because the technology needed just wasn't there, and finally with the N64 it was, and I mean, just look how great this game looks. I mean, on the N64 there's 3 very different Star Wars experiences, and I would have to argue that Star Wars Rogue Squadron is the best experience you're going to have on the console for Star Wars. But I mean, this comes from an era where licensed games actually weren't that bad. We really saw some terrible licensed games a few years later, but up until this point there was some good quality control there, and it's a time period I wish we could almost go back to. But these games are all on their own better than Star Wars Battlefront 2, so there's that. But that is it for today, guys. I tried to fit them all in time. I went a little over time, but it's okay. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button down below and check out all the other Nintenduary videos we have done so far. There's just one episode left. It's been a blast, guys, and Luke and I will return tomorrow with a review of Super Smash Bros.